In the first part of this series on stress, we had spoken about what stress is and what stressors were. Today, I'm going to talk about the various kinds of manifestations that stress can produce in any individual. Broadly speaking, I could divide these manifestations into physical manifestations, psychological manifestations, social manifestations, and behavioral manifestations. Let me tell you what the possible physical manifestations of stress could be. If stress produces its effects on a person's heart and on his circulatory system, it could cause the blood pressure to go up, it could cause the blood pressure to fall down, it could cause alterations in that person's pulse rate or his heartbeat. If stress starts to affect the lungs and the respiratory system, someone who is vulnerable to developing an asthmatic attack would probably have an asthmatic attack if he was facing a lot of stress. If stress starts to affect that person's stomach and intestines, it could produce acidity, it could produce ulcers, it could produce changes in appetite, changes in digestion. If stress starts to affect a person's skin, he could have dermatitis, he could have eczema. So stress is like a monster which can have a myriad manifestations physically. If you look at the psychological manifestations of stress, the primary manifestations would be on a person's mood. Stress would elicit a lot of negative emotions. The primary emotions that could be elicited would be feeling low, feeling sad, feeling irritable, feeling anxious, feeling afraid. It could cause a person to start getting suspicious. It could cause the person to start having a lot of doubts. The person could lash out at other people because he's irritable, he's short-tempered, he has a poor frustration tolerance, he has a low ability to handle what he or she perceives is inefficiency on the part of his subordinates, on the part of his peers, of his colleagues, of his children, and so on. If we look at the social manifestations, stress typically would produce, I would expect stress to produce social avoidance. The person would start to withdraw from social contact, which would not necessarily be limited only to family members. That social contact from which this avoidance or this withdrawal is seen could be with friends, with relatives, with people at the workplace and so on. Social bitterness, social resentment could come up. The person could not only start being envious of others, but possibly be jealous of other people. There would be this tendency to compare yourself with people around you and come out inferior or worthless in the process. Then, if you look at the behavioral manifestations of stress, a person who is unable to sleep because of stress might start taking sleeping pills, might start abusing drugs. There is a tendency to start consuming alcohol in much larger amounts. Stress can start affecting your sexual functioning. It can decrease your desire to have sex, which is what I would say is an effect on the libido. It can cause a decrease in the performance, the sexual performance of this person if the stress crosses a certain threshold. So this is a broad outline of the different manifestations that stress could produce in any individual. I will be back with more in the next parts of this series.